For a long time, neuroscience worked under a simple assumption. Perception comes from the world. Light enters the eyes, sound enters the ears, signals travel inward. The brain receives this information and builds experience. This assumption felt obvious, so obvious that it was rarely questioned. But in 2025, a study published in Nature Neuroscience tested a quiet idea. What if perception does not depend on sensory organs at all? What if the brain only needs the right pattern? The researchers did not begin with philosophy. They began with biology. They worked with animal models whose brain circuits were already well mapped. Using a method called optogenetics, they genetically modified specific neurons so that those neurons would respond to light, not heat, not electricity, light. This mattered because light can be controlled with extreme precision, timing, location, pattern. Instead of stimulating the entire brain, they targeted only selected neural populations that normally participate in perception. Next came the method that made this study different. Rather than using wires or implanted devices, the team used a wireless transcranial system. That means stimulation occurred through the skull without physical connections. Light was delivered in carefully designed patterns directly into cortical regions that normally process sensory information. There were no images presented to the eyes, no sounds played to the ears, no physical stimuli in the environment. Only structured light interacting with neurons. What the researchers were testing was not whether neurons could be activated. That was already known. They wanted to know something more specific. Would the brain interpret these patterns as meaningful experience, or would it treat them as noise? Earlier experiments had failed for this exact reason. Electrical stimulation caused neurons to fire, but the firing lacked structure. The brain responded with confusion, not perception. This time, the stimulation followed patterns that mirrored how real sensory signals normally unfold inside the cortex. The results were clear. When specific patterns were delivered, the animals behaved as if they were experiencing something real, not randomly, not inconsistently. When the pattern changed, the reported perception changed. When the stimulation stopped, the perception disappeared. The brain was not reacting to stimulation itself, it was interpreting structure. Importantly, this was not imagination, hallucination, or generalized arousal. The responses were predictable, repeatable, linked directly to the pattern being delivered. From the brain's perspective, the origin of the signal did not matter. Only the organization did. This is where the study becomes controversial, not because it suggests mind control or artificial consciousness. It does not. The controversy is quieter. It challenges a foundational belief that perception must begin at the senses. This research suggests something different, that senses are not the source of perception, but one possible input channel. The brain builds experience internally. If the internal pattern matches expectations, experience emerges. This does not mean reality is fake. It means reality is interpreted. The world provides constraints, but the brain decides how those constraints are experienced. This idea already existed in theory: predictive processing, internal models, perception as inference. What this study provided was biological evidence. The safest way to understand this result is not as a technological breakthrough, but as a clarification. Perception is not something the world gives you. It is something your brain generates when incoming patterns make sense. Eyes and ears are efficient tools, but they are not mandatory. The brain does not ask where a signal comes from. It asks only one question: Does this pattern fit the model I already have? If the answer is yes, experience appears. If the answer is no, the signal is ignored. This research does not predict the future. It explains the present. Perception has always been internal. This study simply removed the illusion that it begins outside the brain. Reality enters as data. Meaning emerges inside.